Felicity, your party did pretty well in Warwickshire, for example, in the Shire County elections by opposing HS2, but I don't understand why you're not trumpeting this project, because it presumably would mean fewer regional flights, it would help get freight off the road, and one would imagine that these trains are more energy efficient than the older ones.
I think at first glance that certainly seemed the case, but I think increasingly the evidence is absolutely the opposite. As far as I can see, this is, above everything else, a vanity project that we simply cannot afford. And this sort of money should be going into things like improving rail across the board, the rest of our rail system, but also looking at alternative ways of travelling.
Can't afford. KPMG, the accountants, say it would be worth up to £3 billion a year to the West Midlands economy.
These arguments are disputed everywhere. There's simply no consensus on all of this, and I think we can spend that money far better, not least in insulating every home in the country that is going to cost massive amounts of money. But if we're talking about transport, why don't we invest in light rail? Why do we invest in a much better public transport system, buses and so on? And let's get people out of cars, out of rail, and onto their feet and onto their bikes.
Laurelie, of
let's
course,
spend
in
the money that
Solihull,
way.
you have a constituency interest in this. Are you saying that jobs and the economy trumps the sort of environmental arguments that Felicity is making?
Well, I think that we would be letting down the people of the West Midlands, the whole region, and letting down industry if we were to reject high-speed rail now, because it's so important. We do need to redistribute that balance. It's not all about London, it's about the Midlands, and it's about the north of England as well. We have got to bring prosperity to those areas.
But many of the arguments suggest that London is going to benefit at the cost of the regions. We've simply got to look at it in different ways. I'm afraid there are really so varied views on this, and that is at least one argument I think is very much needs to be taken into account.
Well, Felicity is right in saying that there are many varied arguments, and you speak to one person, they'll say one thing to you, another will say another. What is indisputable, in my view, is that it will bring economic benefit to our region, and we desperately need it in the West Midlands. Could
you perhaps soften the edge of some of the environmental arguments against it? If you think of, for example, Jeremy Wright, Warwickshire Conservative MP, who would like to see existing route corridors like the M40 used, albeit maybe a slightly slower service, that would reduce the environmental damage and strengthen the case, surely? Like the M40 route.
I mean, a lot of time and energy has been put into trying to make sure that the route that we've got is environmentally sensitive. And I've spoken to HS2 on many occasions, and they have many projects where they are going to minimise any environmental impact of this. But, I mean, you can't make an omelette without breaking eggs, I'm afraid.
Shaking her head throughout that.
Absolutely, you cannot. And although I think the economic arguments are as strong as the environmental, as far as the environment goes, it's claimed that it will be beneficial in terms of reducing carbon. There are strong arguments refuting that absolutely. The land take is absolutely massive. I mean, really, in every way you look at it, I think it's a disaster. And there are better ways of spending that money.